For more than 20 years, I've been obsessed with guitars. From playing them, to working on them, to buying and collecting them, I've built quite the collection of awesome guitars. This season I'm going to be going more in-depth, showing you some of the partial builds and behind-the-scenes stuff that I've never shown before. I'll also be answering some of your questions that I've been receiving in the comments below these videos. Of course, I'll be refinishing, refretting, rewiring, whatever it takes to turn these guitars into some real shred machines. This is Trash to Thrash. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Trash to Thrash. I'm your host, Mark Murray, and today we're going unplugged. Hey, not like that! Today I'm working on a pair of acoustic guitars that have been hanging around the shop for the better part of a decade. Last week I got 5 new guitars in, this week I got a shipment of 4 guitars, and there are a few more on the way, so I need to clear some stuff out of here and make some space. The thing that's been holding me back on these ones was the nut. The nuts were busted a long time ago. This is a Yamaha FD01S. This guitar is the definition of trash to thrash because this guitar was destined for the dump. It was set outside on trash day with the trash cans and my dad noticed it. His next door neighbor had set this guitar out to be trashed. So he ran over, asked the neighbor about it, and he snagged it for me. My dad isn't a guitarist, but he knows a little bit about guitars, so when he saw it was a Yamaha and saw its condition, he knew this would be a guitar that I could get rolling again. It was missing the strings, the nut, and the bridge pins. I was in no rush to fix it, so it just sat around for a while. At one point, I accumulated 5 or 6 acoustic guitars, so I just started giving them away to my friends. This guitar was the final survivor of those 5 or 6 acoustics. It does have some noticeable wear on the fretboard, but I actually think it gives it some pretty cool character. I like the way this looks. You could tell whoever played this was playing chords because it's only the first 3 frets really that have that kind of wear. The Dean was given to me from a friend around 12 years ago. It's super nice with great tone, and it's extra gaudy looking, which I love. It has a quilted maple top, a burst finish, a binding, abalone inlays. On paper, this is my dream acoustic guitar, but there's just something about the looks that I don't love also. I can't put my finger on it. It seems like it should fit right in with my prettiest guitars, but it definitely sticks out to me. I don't play a ton of steel string guitar stuff, but I always like to have one on hand. As many of you know, I have a lot of guitars, so when it comes to acoustics, I try to keep it simple. I like having a standard 6-string guitar, a classical 6-string guitar, and a 12-string. When I get an idea for a song in my head, I want to have all the tools to be able to make it a reality. When I'm imagining music, I'll hear it inside my head, and I already know the type of sound that I want to get out of it, so I'll reach for the appropriate guitar. But there are times when I want to experiment, so I'll grab the 12-string or grab the nylon and try something else just to see if it sparks something. So having a bunch of different acoustics on hand really helps with this kind of thing. So here we have the Yamaha on the bench. The original nut was missing, so I didn't have to remove the nut. And now I've set the new one into place. The width feels great, but it's not glued in yet. These 2 acoustics I'm working on today both have the same size nut, so I'll be using the same thing on both of them. And this unbleached bone nut is listed down in the description below. There are a few key points when building a nut for a guitar. In this case, I bought one that is pre-slotted. That means the slots for the strings to sit into are already measured and cut, so I don't have to do that. But it is very likely that the slots are not going to be cut to the proper depth, so I will need to modify that somehow. I can either sand the bottom of the nut, or I can use files on each one of the string slots. There's reasons why we would do one or the other, but I'm not going to go into that right now. If you want to build your own nut, it's actually a really technical but easy thing to do. I'll link down below in the description to a StewMac video where the master Dan Earlywine will show you how to make a nut. There are different sizes width-wise for your nut too, so you have to make sure to measure yours and order the one that matches your neck. Then you could use a gauge like this to properly mark the string spacing on the nut. Using precisely sized files, you can then begin slotting the nut. These are some bone nuts at StewMac's website. They're a great resource for guitar parts and luthier tools. You can see on some of the fender nuts, the bottom is radius to match the fretboard, while on others, it's flat. So this is a really important thing to notice on your guitar if you're replacing the nut. I keep on mentioning StewMac throughout this episode, and they're not a sponsor, but if you want to help support Guitar Guts and Trash to Thrash, here's a few ways you can help out. Number 1, share this show. Take a screenshot of the show and share it on your social media. Tell your friends, go check out Guitar Guts and Trash to Thrash at guitarguts.tv. Tell people about the show. It really helps me out. Number 2 is to join the Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you could join the Patreon page and get ad-free versions of all the videos I do, plus some Patreon exclusive content. For $10 a month, you can get entered into the CEO tier, where I do a monthly giveaway of a guitar or like a huge prize package. So for $1 or up to $10 a month, you could donate at my Patreon page. The links are down in the description. Number 3, go buy a guitar. GuitarGuts.com, I have the link at the top for guitars for sale, and I have guitars, my kill switch pedal, Guitar Guts kill switches on there, all kinds of cool stuff up in the Guitar Guts store. So if you want to help support and get something back, you can go buy something from there. Number 4, go subscribe to my retro gaming channel. It's another YouTube channel where I do video game reviews, and I go game hunting, and I collect 80s and 90s memorabilia, Power Rangers, Pokemon, Ninja Turtles. I mean, you can see all these video game stuff that I have behind me. I love this stuff. So go follow me. My links are down in the description. There's also a second Instagram page that's linked up with it. If you guys were into all this old kind of stuff and you want to get back into it, send me a message and tell me what systems you're looking for. I can help you find one. I buy and flip systems all the time, and I come across all kinds of stuff. So if you're looking for something or you want to get back into this stuff, let me know. I'll hook you up. And number 5, if you want to support Guitar Guts and Trash to Thrash, be sure to be subscribed to this channel. Hit the like button on this video. Leave your comments down below. Even if it's just a one-word comment, that's going to help me in the YouTube algorithm kind of move up. And be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to be notified every time a new video comes out. Now let's get back to the show. Before gluing the nut in, I always recommend laying it in and putting the strings through and seeing about how high we're going to be sitting. Sometimes you need to file this bottom edge of the nut before gluing it in. This one actually looked pretty close to start, so we're going to go with it. I can tell I need to file the slots since the strings I'm going to be using won't fit in these ones. And here I just put a real thin layer, a couple drops of super glue to hold it in place. You don't want to slather it in super glue or wood glue because you may want to remove this nut someday as they wear out, so just a couple drops of glue is good. Then I clamp the nut into place just to make sure it's not going to migrate or move around a little bit. I'll leave that for about 20 minutes on the bench, and then I'll continue working on this one tomorrow. If you think the clamp is overkill, like I do, you could just use a piece of tape like this. Just hopefully you didn't use too much glue and there's no glue that's seeping out that will stick to the tape. Tomorrow I'll get back to this guitar and put in the new bridge pins that I got for this guitar. The bridge pins hold the strings in. Now over here on the Dean, we're going to be doing the same thing. We got to glue that nut in. Here you can see I put the strings across it, but they're not really sitting down into the nut. So I'm going to open up the slots and make them a little wider so the strings can sit down in them a little bit deeper. This guitar still had the original strings on it, so I removed the nut and slid the new nut under them just to kind of check out what the action looked like. And just like the Yamaha, it looks like it's going to be pretty close, so we're not going to file the bottom of the nut, but that would be an option. Now down here at the bridge, I'm going to be using this string winder. A lot of people don't know, but there's actually a little groove in it that's made to pull pins out of a bridge. If the pins are real stuck, it might not get them out, but 90% of the time, it works well. These pins have been sitting in this guitar for probably a decade now, so a couple of them were a little stubborn, but they did come out. While the strings are off the guitar, this is the time to get in there and detail all the fine edges where the bridge touches the body and really polish the guitar up. Since my plan is to fix up these two guitars and then sell them, I want to go through and make sure everything is nice and tight. The tuner hardware is notorious for loosening up over time, so double check that. Here where the old nut was, feel and make sure there's no glue in there. A lot of times glue is left by the old nut, and if you feel anything there, you can use an X-Acto knife with a flat edge or a chisel blade and gently remove any old glue. Now I'll apply 2 little drops of super glue and set the nut into place. This Dean Acoustic was actually my go-to steel string for years, but then I found this LTD acoustic and I fell in love. Now this is my style. It really fits in with my LTD and Edwards guitars. It's got a quilted maple top, beautiful abalone binding, gold hardware, and it's purple. Are you kidding me? When I saw this thing, I lost my mind and I knew I had to have it. The Dean sort of matched this collection of guitars I have here, but it never felt right. This purple guitar fits in perfect with my collection. I found this guitar on an app called OfferUp for $75. I drove 30 minutes to Santa Clarita, California and picked it up. I love the way this guitar looks, but the playability could use a little improvement. It's definitely a candidate for an overhaul and possibly a refret. I mostly play classical acoustic when I play acoustic guitar. I like the feel and the tone of the nylon strings more than steel strings. They have a softness, which allows for a more dramatic playing in my opinion. I also really like the feel of nylon strings in my fretting hand. For me, it's just more comfortable to play, especially if I'm playing leads. But if I'm playing stuff that's more chord-based, I like to play a steel string guitar. Alright, it's the next day now, and we're ready to continue on these guitars. I'm a huge fan of Ernie Ball and an official Ernie Ball artist, so on this guitar I'm going to be using Earthwood acoustic guitar strings, light gauge 1152s. It's funny the difference between acoustic and electric strings because with electrics, 1152 definitely isn't light. It's now the following day, and the glue is dried to hold the nut in. What I'm going to be doing next is stringing up the high E and the low E only. Then I'll start slotting them and getting them at the proper depth. I have an assortment of nut slotting files, each with a different width, so I can cut a perfect size space for which string's going to be used. This is definitely something that if you've never done it before, you want to try it on a guitar you don't care about. You don't want to do this to your classic Les Paul or your most prized possession guitar because it's pretty tricky and you have to just go a little bit at a time, put the string back in and check it. Now, if you've done this before, you can probably fly through this pretty quickly. I mean, there are a lot of different gauges and things you can use to speed up the job and make it accurate. The reason I started with the two outside strings, the high E and the low E, is so that I can get the radius of the fretboard correct. These slots need to be cut so that they match the fretboard because the fretboard isn't flat. It has a radius to it, so the frets are higher up towards the middle of the fretboard, under the D and G strings. I like to get the high E and low E proper, and then as I do the strings moving toward the center, I can start to eyeball it and I can see what the radius is supposed to look like. After the two E's look and feel good, I'll move to the A and the B string, and then lastly the D and the G string. I did all these steps to both guitars, and in the shop I like using one of these tuners. Very simple, it's the Boss Tuner app, and with the microphones that are in these phones today, this app is actually pretty good. If you really want to make your acoustic guitar shred, you can lower the action a little bit. While we have the strings off, you can remove the bridge and sand the bridge down to bring the action down lower on your guitar. You have to be careful doing this though, because if you go too low, it's going to start vibrating and buzzing because the strings are going to vibrate against the frets. So you really want to only do this if you know what you're doing or if it's a guitar that you really don't care about and you want to just practice on it. On most guitars, you can put a lighter gauge string on it and lower the action down a little bit. That'll make it easier to play on. But as you go lighter, your guitar's tone will change a little bit. It'll lighten up with a lighter string. I had mentioned earlier, sometimes when you make a new nut, you need to sand down the bottom of it, so you start out at the correct height for the string slots. I use the same technique for nuts and bridges that I want to sand down evenly across the whole surface. Of course, you want to double check and make sure you have plenty of space for your strings to move down, because once you file this, there's no going back. The easiest way to lower your whole bridge or your nut uniformly is to take some double-sided tape and put it down on a flat surface. Then take some 320 grit sandpaper and attach that to the double-sided tape. You could even just clamp the sandpaper down like this. Now we have a nice flat sanding plane. Now we can run the bottom edge of the nut or the bridge across the sandpaper, and we know we're going to get a nice, even, level sanding. If you're new to this type of mod, I recommend just sanding a little bit at a time, then reinstalling it, putting the strings back on, and checking it. If you think you can get it a little lower, take the strings off and do a little bit more, reinstall it, and check it again. Do this a few times, but you really don't want to go too low because there's no going back. Once you sand it too low, you'll eventually just have to replace the nut or the bridge. But luckily, they're not too expensive if you do ruin it. If I were keeping these guitars for myself, I probably would sand the bridge. Get that action real low. Not everybody likes low action on acoustics, so I'm going to leave these ones as is. They're playing great and they're ready to jam on. Check these things out. guys are enjoying the show so far. If you have any questions about how I do anything here on the show, leave them down in the comments below. Each week I go through, I check all the comments, and I'll grab a handful of them out that look interesting to me to answer here on the show. So that's what I'm going to do right now. This is Trash Talk. Before we get into the questions, I want to talk about this Jackson King V that I had showed you guys last week that my customer James Ford donated to the channel for me to give away to a kid. He said that that's his only stipulation, is he wants it to go to a kid. This thing is brand new. It's got the tags on it. It's a, believe, a JS32 Jackson Rhodes. It's a really cool guitar, man. King V, not a Rhodes. And yeah, we're going to be giving it away to a kid. So I had asked last week for some suggestions from you guys on how we should give this away. How are we going to pick the person that we're giving this to? And I got a lot of great ideas. I got another question for you guys, though. What's the cutoff? If James says he wants it to go to a kid, is it 18 years old? Is it 15 years old? Is it 12 and under? What's the cutoff? I want you guys involved in this because I want it to be the community helping to give this guitar away. Then next week I'm going to come back. I got a couple more questions and we're going to figure this out. But I want you guys involved in this. So let me know what should be the age cutoff for this. I think we're going to do some type of riff competition. I had a couple really interesting ideas that you guys gave me last week. So I'm probably going to go with one of those ideas because I liked them. So now let's get into the questions. First question up. How did you set the correct height for the two pickups? Is there a detail in the EMG manual? Thanks, buddy. Great video. So this is in reference to the Les Paul that I had put the EMG pickups in a couple weeks ago. And I thought that was a great question. I forgot to mention how you do that. In the EMG paperwork, when you install the pickups, they do explain that you just get them pretty much as close to the strings as you can. And it's not going to affect the strings the same way that passive pickups with stronger magnets like a Seymour Duncan would. Seymour Duncans, if you get them too close to the string, the magnet is actually going to pull the string. It's going to attract the string. So the string's not going to resonate properly, and it's actually going to kill your sustain instead of extend it like you'd think if the pickup is closer. EMGs are not the same, though. EMGs use a preamp to give them their power. So you can actually move the EMGs as close as possible to the strings. And you'll notice that you'll dial them in back and forth. You'll get a different tone. When they're closer to the strings, they're stronger. When you bring them back, they're a little bit less powerful, we'll say. And you just kind of got to dial them in to what you like. But when I do it, I get them as close to the strings as possible. Then I'll go in and I'll palm mute real heavy to make sure the palm muting is not going to push the string to where it's touching the EMG ever. For the neck pickup, I make sure that the string, I can fret the last fret on the neck, and it's not going to make the string bottom out against the pickup. Great question. So next one. Mark, I love the show and love your attitude. Thanks so much for sharing your skills. I do have a question for your FAQ. How did and do you handle things when your projects just weren't working out? Was there ever a time when you just wanted to throw in the towel on painting and customizing guitars? I've had some challenges. I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now maybe, and for myself. And in the beginning I would come across these huge challenges, but what I found was just keep trying. If you mess up, sand it down, try again. If you mess up again, sand it down, try again. If you have a guitar for 10 or 15 years and it takes you a year to build this thing, it's not like you're going to look back 5 years down the road and go, yeah, but it took me a year to build it. You're just going to love the guitar if you got it right and you did everything to your specs, how you wanted it, and it came out good. If you rush things or you're cool with imperfections that really you're not cool with, but you just let them slide, 5 years down the road, you're going to look at those imperfections all the time and you're going to hate them. So you want to take the time to let the paint dry if you mess up the paint, then sand it down, repaint it. It's like you got experience of painting 2 guitars by doing that. But for me personally, I've had a couple really big challenges. One was, for some reason, I started getting crazy fisheyes in my clear coat. I bought a new air compressor. I bought a new $350 gun. I bought a new brand of clear coat. I changed my whole setup. I still got the same problems. I couldn't figure it out. So I started using Spray Max 2K in a can. I don't have that problem anymore. So there's something about spraying them that's different than using the aerosol cans. I can't figure it out. I know there's a product you can add to the clear that's called fisheye remover, but I don't want to add extra stuff. It seems like it should be working fine, but for a month or two, that was a huge headache for me. Another thing was finding the proper sandpapers for level sanding and the right polishes, because I don't know anybody in my personal life who does this all the time, so I couldn't get advice or have someone come over and show me. I was just watching tons of videos, and everybody does everything so much differently. Everybody's got their own way to do things, so just my advice would be to be patient, Stick with it. It's going to take you 5 to 10 years to build a guitar that's going to really blow people away or impress you and make you, to make something that's professional level. It's going to take a long time to get that good. Next question. Have you had any experience with wood filler shrinking after you paint the body? Also, what's the fastest way to strip the paint on a guitar in your experience? Yeah, I mean, as far as the filler goes, when you're filling in like an empty cavity, a neck pickup or something like that, you need to fill it, let it dry for a while, then sand it and leave it alone. When you leave it, it's going to be perfectly smooth, but when you come back, you're going to notice the wood expanded, the filler shrank, all these things keep happening. So you'll need to refill it, resand it, and let it sit. Refill it, resand it, let it sit. I like to seal it in with primer sometimes and let it sit there, and then you can come back. But yeah, that's just part of it. It takes a long time to get that right. Sometimes it can take up to a month or two to fill a cavity. As far as the best way to strip a finish before you paint it, I don't actually strip finishes off because I don't like dealing with super toxic paint stripper, and I don't like sanding it all the way down to wood because then you risk cutting through into the grain and having to reseal the guitar. So as long as you get a good sanding on the surface of everywhere you're going to paint it, that means no more glossy spots on it, using like 600 grit sandpaper, you should be good. The new paint is going to stick to that rough surface that you created by sanding it. All right, next question. I like the ice earth finish. I would like to know how you manage to get fine lines with painter's tape because I often get a little bit of paint bleed with the paint. I'll explain that further in a future episode. I got a couple EVH guitars that I've done lately, and I'll go into depth on that soon. Next question. I like the rig you have for painting. So you can do the whole guitar and rotate the guitar everywhere you need. What do you suggest for painting set neck guitars? I got a few questions this week about my painting rig, what compressor I'm using, and a bunch of technical questions like that. So on one of the future episodes here in Season 3, I'm going to bring you guys out to the paint booth and show you my setup I'm using now. I've went back in the last couple months and I've upgraded everything. It's all completely different. If you notice what I was using in Season 1 versus Season 2 and 3, I got like a whole new setup. So I'll show you all that in one of the next episodes. Next question. Love your videos. Please do a video on how to make and install headstock logos. I've showed it a bunch of times here on the show, but I know you guys like in-depth how-tos, not like in the show form, more like instructional form. So if you notice, I did how to install the EMGs in the Les Paul recently. I'll do this. I'm going to be doing a couple more tech ones before that because I got some footage ready to start editing, but this is definitely going on my list of things to show you guys how to do more in depth. Next question. Honestly, dude, those have been my favorites you've done yet. It's so simple but different. Those would definitely be something I'd play. I appreciate that. I got a lot of comments like that. I also got a lot of comments from the crackle haters out there. Turns out people are getting sick of the crackle just like they got sick of the splatter, just like they get sick of kill switches and EMGs. Guys, this is what I do. I do crackle and splatter and swirl dipping and crazy custom finishes. So you're going to get more crackle and more splatter in the future. But like I said, I got swirl dipping coming up, and I got a few other really cool, like the crystal painting. A couple of really crazy things that are in the works over there that you guys will see soon. But don't worry, there's much more crackle, much more different things too coming soon. Which leads us right into the next one. You fancy trying a cloth top? No, but I would totally do it. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm thinking eventually, after doing a lot of these other ideas, like the crystal and the swirl and all this stuff. Why not try a cloth top? And the last one for this week, Link the Screamo Band. I referenced last week that I used to be in a Screamo band. It was called Luck Down. Good luck finding it online. Actually, if you go on YouTube, you might be able to find some clips that somebody else put some images and videos to. And actually, there is, our first show is on there from 2002, I believe. So it's almost 20 years ago. This year it'll be 20 years ago, our first show we played. But we don't have our music up on Spotify yet. We're a little yet like we plan to, but we might in the future. I've been talking to the band members. We're all still friends, but maybe one day I'll release it out to you guys. All right, guys, those were some great questions. Thanks for sending them in. If there's anything you have questions about, leave them down in the comments. And if it's something I haven't addressed yet, or something that I get asked a lot, or something really interesting, then I'll bring it to the show and answer it for everybody to hear. Alright guys, that is it for the episode. What did you think of these two acoustics? You have any questions about replacing nuts or working on guitars? Leave them down in the comments below and I'll grab a couple of them to answer on next week's episode during Trash Talk. These two acoustics are actually both for sale right now in my eBay store. But if you want to buy it directly through me, I'll give you 15% off. So send me an email, mark@guitarguts.com. My email is also listed down in the description below, along with all the links from everything I was talking about today, including the tools I used and the supplies I used. There's links to all of it down there. If you buy things through the Amazon links that I put down there, it actually helps support Trash to Thrash and Guitar Guts, because Amazon will reward me for bringing you to them, and they give me a little cut. So it doesn't cost you anything extra, but it really benefits me and the channel when you guys use the links down below. Other ways to support Guitar Guts and Trash to Thrash are to buy the Guitar Guts Signature Kill Boost pedal, a Guitar Guts Signature Kill Switch, or one of the guitars. I think I have 3 guitars up for sale over at guitarguts.com. There's a link at the top, Guitars for Sale. You click that, and all my stuff is there. So I also have links to that down in the description. If you want your guitar modded by me, or you want to hire me to do a commission, send me an email and let's talk about it. Shout out and thank you so much to all my patrons. You guys have been killing it lately. If you're not a patron yet, you can sign up for as little as $1 a month. You get ad-free versions of Trash to Thrash. And if you sign up for $10 a month, you also get entered into my monthly guitar giveaway. So it's usually a guitar or a giant prize package, and I'm going to announce it next week what I'm going to be giving away, but it's something killer. It's almost done. So I'm going to wait till next week and show you guys the guitar when it's done. But it's badass. One of the coolest guitars I've ever given away. I encourage you guys to go follow my retro gaming channel and my Instagram that is related to that, so information is down below for that. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you very soon. Rock on, my friends.